welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. I'm Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. Why waste your liquid gold in a breast pad? Wear the BPA-free Milky's Milk Saver and effortlessly collect every last drop of milk while you breastfeed. You can wear it on the opposite breast while breastfeeding or pumping to collect the letdown. Head to fairhavenhealth.com and use promo code BADASS for 10% off your purchase. You can also find the link at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. What are we talking about today, Dianne?
We are going to talk about pumping, right? Like, we had somebody send us all these pumping questions, and we were like,
yes.
You know what? We're just gonna go with it and talk about
People
it.
are constantly asking me these details about pumping, and I'm like, I don't know your details of your day. So, somebody, D, this wonderful lady on Instagram, messaged me all these questions, and I was like, listen, we just need to do an episode on this so that I can be referring people to this episode.
Yeah.
And I said, D, please, take a week and write down every single question that you have throughout your day and send them to me. And so she did. And so I have questions that I'm sure anyone who's pumping throughout the day has about how to pump at work and how to pump when you're away and the logistics of that. So we've got a lot of information to go through today.
We are going to do the review of the week. And the review of the week today is from a little mama named Natalia Circo. And she says that the podcast is informative with some humor involved. As a breastfeeding mom with both children, 18 months strong, I can totally relate and give 5 stars. Highly recommend to give a listen. Slip on Bluetooth and play in your car. For a new mom to an experienced mom, it's for everyone. Thank you.
Aw, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalia. I'm sorry for the names that I'm probably butchering along the way. I really do apologize because I don't mean to do
We
that.
try.
We do try, yeah. But all right, so pumping. And, you know, this is real life stuff. And we totally have, I have a love-hate with pumping. Like, I seriously do. I'm so glad that we have pumps. If you're separated from your baby, you go back to work, you just, you know, you want to get out for the evening, whatever your mission is with a pump. But I hate them because I feel like women think they have to pump, that it's part of the necessity of, you know, if you're going to breastfeed, you have to pump. It, like, goes together.
Well, I think people think that's how you keep up your milk supply.
Yeah, and it's not.
Like, I'm not going to have a good milk supply if I don't pump.
Right. So there's always questions. And pumping is so individualized, and there's some demons that go with pumping, and it's just like, so let's get started on some of these questions, because I know there's going to be some good ones.
Okay, so the first question that she has is, should the mother only pump at the exact times of the missed feeds, whether that's 3 or 4 hours apart? I was told to pump every 3 hours that I'm separated from my baby. So when are we supposed to be pumping?
Well, so, all right.
That sounds loaded.
Yeah. So I will tell you, and maybe people say that I'm wrong, but and you know by now, year and whatever we've been doing this podcast, and if you're a regular listener of this podcast, you know that Abby and I are very like, why are we making this harder than it needs to be?
Right.
It does not need to be this hard. And if you are already like stressed out about going back to work, the last thing I want anybody to worry about is trying to pump at the exact time that your baby is feeding, because that will make you insane. Like, you will be insane. If you can kind of, you know, like, if you can do it every 3 hours, fantastic. What I usually tell people is, if you are working an 8-hour day, in a perfect world, you're working an 8-hour day, pump once in the first part of the day, once in your first 4 hours, once in your second 4 hours, and once at lunch, and that's great. If it's 4 hours in between time, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. What I want you to listen to is your body, really. Like, are you feeling really full? Are you feeling like you need to go pump and it's only been 2.5 hours and you can go and pump? Then great. If it's one of those schedules, like I have a lot of teachers that they can only pump when their kids are at like gym class or something. It's like you can't regulate. You can't determine when that's going to be. Sometimes you don't have that kind of control over, okay, now I'm going to go pump because it's been 3 hours and this is when I have to go because that's when my lactation consultant told me I had to do it. If you have the time open and you can go pump, then go pump. If you can't, then do it when you can. As long as you're getting it in, that's what's the important piece. If you're getting
and the whole like pump when your baby would normally be feeding, that whole thing would require you to be like tracking when they're feeding when you're with your baby.
Right.
You know, you'd be constantly looking at your clock, going, "Oh gosh, when was the last time they fed? Or how long has it been?" And it's not. I wouldn't go to that point of causing all of that stress.
Plus
breastfeed on demand and then pump when you can.
Yeah, and it's different every day, you know? And I mean, and your baby goes through a growth spurt. Maybe they're going to have their, you know, and what if you work evenings and that's when your baby does their cluster feeding? So you're going to go and pump every 20 minutes? Like you can't, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. So you have to try to do it, like listen to your body. If you're feeling full, go pump. If you have time to go pump. If you know, oh my gosh, I know I can usually go at the 3-hour mark, but I've got a meeting that I have to go to that, at that time. So maybe I could, slip it in beforehand. Sometimes you just have to make arrangements to do it when you can do it.
Right. And there's certain jobs where, if you're working like shift work and stuff, I mean, your breaks are scheduled for you. Like a lot of times that's completely out of your control.
Right.
And then you'll get into a rhythm with pumping, just like you do with feeding. Yeah,
absolutely. And kind of think about it this way. Like if you aren't going at the same time every day, if you have one of those jobs or you're in a situation where you can't go at the same time every day and you're just kind of like going when you can, like that is kind of like feeding on demand.
Yeah.
And your body handles it fine. Like it's fine. What we want to do is tell your body that you need the milk. Like that's the point, is to get the milk out of your body. It doesn't have to be at a certain time every single day.
Yeah. Okay. And is there an ideal length of time to pump? Dee pumps for 20 minutes. How long should we be pumping?
20 minutes is usually like the standard time that we tell people. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know where that 20-minute time frame came from.
That sounds so long.
I mean, I don't know. Like, we always just say, 15, 20 minutes. I don't know where that came from. Like, I really don't. And it's so funny because we always go, you're recovered in 6 weeks. You can start working out.
Yeah, right.
Again.
Yeah, we just sort of make up all these numbers.
We do. We make it all up. I don't know where that came from. So I always tell moms, like, I wouldn't do longer than 20 minutes. And I wouldn't do longer than 20 minutes because you'll want to throw that thing out the window. Like, it's enough, I've had moms that have pumped for, 45 minutes because they're like, oh, you know what, I just put it on, I sit and do email or whatever, I don't even pay attention to the time. If that doesn't bother you, then that's on you. That's fine. But 15 minutes is fine. If the only thing I would say that is if you have milk that is still like really coming out, I wouldn't stop. But if your milk has stopped coming and you're just kind of like, not getting another letdown or you're not pumping anymore and you're still, it hasn't been 20 minutes yet, I still have to keep going, you can feel free to stop. You don't have to keep going because it has to be 20 minutes. So if some women will get on a pump and get the majority of the milk they're going to get in 10 minutes, and that's okay too. It's going to be different for everybody. If 20 minutes is working in your schedule and you find that is what you like to do, then that's okay. But there's no reason it has to be 20 minutes. Like there's no, any kind of reasoning or plan behind that 20-minute number at all.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so this next question is complicated, and it involves equations.
Oh, boy.
And and it feels like something that's being made very complicated that maybe we can simplify.
Okay.
It says, I have read 2 different models for calculating the size of bottles for baby. Is one of these better than the other, or is there another method? Do you take 25 to 30 ounces and divide by the number of times your baby nurses in a 24-hour period and create bottles of that size? Or do you only provide 1 to 1 1/4 ounces per hour of division of mother and baby?
We are making this way too hard.
This is very complicated. So she has, for example, the first one is 28. I guess 28 feeds in 7. 28 by 7 equals 4.
Okay. So
4 ounces per bottle.
Yep, and so it's 4 ounces per bottle because she feeds the baby 7 times a day.
Okay, so what's the 28?
That is probably like how
the
many
amount,
ounces the baby,
the ounces of total.
Yeah, the baby should be getting between 25 to 30 ounces a day.
Okay.
But if you're only feeding 7 times a day, then that would be 4 ounces per bottle. But if you're feeding 12 times a day, then it's going to be less than that. So you can use that equation, and I have had some people do that. I've had some people go by the weight of the baby. So it depends on what the baby weighs and how much how many times you're feeding the baby. I really like.
So I think the question is, how do we know how big should the bottles be? How many ounces of breast milk should be in a bottle? How much do we feed our baby? Is that the question? That's the question, right?
That's the question. And that is my biggest thing with that is, like, how old is the baby? Because the baby that's 6 months is going to get more than the baby that's 2 months if you're just going back to work. So it would be, if it's a 2-month-old baby, you're looking at 2 ounces, maybe 2.5. But you're also feeding that baby more frequently because that baby is eating more frequently. Your 5-month-old baby is going to be a little bit less because they're stretching out their feeds a little bit more. So they're going to have more in a bottle. Mm-hmm. So it just depends. Babies that are getting breast milk, though, never really need more than about 4 ounces, even when they're a year. So it's very different than formula, whereas formula you keep increasing the amount because they need more vitamins, nutrients, protein, fat, all of that stuff, and it's not, formula is just stagnant. It doesn't change, and it doesn't, but as the baby grows, the breast milk changes with the baby, so you don't have to give more volume because everything is there.
Gotcha.
So it's really cool. But a lot of people don't realize that, so they feel like they have to keep up with these huge amounts by bottle, and you really don't. So if it's a younger baby, you're looking at like 2.5 ounces. An older baby, 4 or 5 months old, you're probably looking at about 4 ounces. You can do that multiplication if you really want to be that strategic. But your baby makes up for it with you later on anyway, if they need more.
Okay. Okay. So here's the next question. What is recommended for a mother who cannot pump the same amount of milk that baby takes at a missed feed? This also comes with an example. My baby drinks 4 ounces every 3 hours away from me. I can usually pump 3 3/4 ounces in the morning and then 2.5 ounces in the afternoon. I massage, compress, pump for 20 minutes, hand express at the end. So she's pumping less than her baby's taking is what she's saying, I suppose.
Yeah. So some women do struggle with pumping. And I don't think that what she's pumping is a struggle at all. I think it's fine. But some women do have a hard time with pumping. And I know you've said in the past, too, that you're like, I didn't respond well to a pump.
Oh, my God. It would just, like, drip into the bottle. It was so depressing. Yeah. So, I mean, I was probably doing, there's all kinds of things about pumping, though, that you just, like, you just get a pump and then you just stick it on your boob and then you're supposed to get the milk out. Like, that's not how it works. Pumping is a skill that you have to learn, and I didn't know that.
And your body has to kind of adapt to it, and you never get the same amount of milk as what the baby can get.
No, right. And you're like you said, everybody's body just reacts differently to it.
Yeah, it just reacts different. So at different times of day, you get different amounts, which is frustrating. And, so there's just, different times of the month. If you've got your period back, you're probably going to get a little bit less milk.
Yeah.
Just hormonally because things shift. So there's just so many things that go into it. But usually what I tell moms, the first things I like to find out is the baby being overfed? And it doesn't sound like
that's the big thing.
So, I mean, the baby, if she had said the baby takes 6 ounces, I'd be like, all right, then, you know, that's not the problem. The problem is we're giving too much milk. But they're giving, you know, 4 ounces per bottle. I would try to manipulate some of those feedings. So I would find out, like, okay, when are you feeding the baby? And can we manipulate that to be like, okay, don't give that last bottle, or maybe only give 2 ounces for that last feeding because you're going to pick the baby up within an hour of getting that last feeding, and you can just feed the baby as soon as you pick him up. Or could you go, is it possible to go see the baby at lunchtime? Or is it possible to, you know, kind of tweak when you do the morning feed so that the baby won't need a bottle right away when they get to daycare? You know, like those kinds of things. Like, what is the routine? And is there a way to switch it around to accommodate saving a little bit of that milk?
Yeah.
I also...
Just like you would ration your lunch out throughout the day.
Yeah.
Instead of eating it all. Like the guy I always want to do is sit down at my desk and then eat everything that I brought for the day right then. But you have to be like, okay, wait, I'm going to be hungry later.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then I would also ask, like, do you pump in the evening? Because some moms, like, they go home and they're like, I don't deal with pumping at all. I go home, I feed my baby, I go to bed, and that's fine. But if you're truly, like, trying to get a little bit more milk, then I will suggest pumping in the evening after the baby goes to bed. Or
like maybe just before you go to sleep or something?
Yeah, like before you go to sleep, or on the weekend. If you do pump on the weekend, or maybe you don't pump on the weekend at all, if you could pump once or twice on the weekend, that will probably get you enough that you can ration it out throughout the week, too. So there's definitely different things that you can do depending on what your routine looks like right now, which is why I say, like, it's so individualized that we can't just go, oh, do this, this, and this, because that might not work for your schedule.
Yeah.
But there's definitely ways to work around it. The other thing is, if your baby's old enough that they're starting solid foods, then sometimes you can fit that into the mix instead of trying to get more milk for them.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
How about a word from our sponsor?
Perfect.
Right here. Like we said, today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. With the Milky's Milk Tray, you can freeze your breast milk into 1-ounce sticks, so you can thaw just the right amount of milk for each feed. Reusable and environmentally friendly, and can be used for baby food later. Head to fairhavenhealth.com and use promo code BADASS for 10% off your purchase. You can also find the link at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. Totally relates, too.
Oh, yeah.
When we're talking about all this bringing milk around.
So what's the next question?
Sure, the next question here is flange sizing. Which I love this. I love this. I know it's so annoying, but I love it because I didn't even know that was a thing until, like, after I threw my pump away. And I was like, what? There's different sizes and it makes a difference on how much milk you're expressing? That's amazing. And I didn't know that. And lots of people, and one of the things I've realized is that so many people don't know that. Mm-hmm. So flange sizing, especially when you have elastic skin. She sounds like a superhero.
Oh my.
Different size nipples and or small and large breasts. So flange sizing, yeah, that's important.
Flange sizing is important. It's important for a couple of reasons. One, because if you're not using the right flange size, pumping might be painful. Two, if you're not using the right flange size, you might get less milk than you could be getting. So it does make a difference. Now, the other thing to consider with flange sizes is that in the beginning, like the first couple of months, you are more full. So you might need a different flange size in the beginning than you would need later on. So it's like, it's different. Different pumps do different sizes because it's not a universal thing, because that would be way too simple. So depending on your pump, you know, like I could sit here and go, oh, you know, standard size is 24 millimeters, but that isn't like that with every pump. So it might just depend on, and women are not a standard size. I can't even like wrap my head around that because I just think it's ridiculous that they're like, oh, our, the standard size that we send to everybody that we put in every pump.
In the world? Yeah, I mean, have you seen breasts lately? I mean, they're so not a standard.
No, it's not a standard. And like, she's got a really great point. I have so many moms that say, one nipple's bigger than the other. And you can use different flange sizes on the same pump. That's.
Absolutely, and that's why a lot of pumps will come with like 2 or 3 different sizes.
Yeah.
Which is good. And so you don't want your nipple to be scraping on the inside.
No.
And you don't want your whole entire areola being sucked in and having this tugging, like the whole thing being sucked into the flange.
It will be uncomfortable. If
you'll know.
Size. Yeah, it will be uncomfortable. So one of the things that makes me laugh is that, like, if women are trying to look it up on their own, which that's what we do nowadays because we love Google, but if we look it up,
JFDI.
Yeah, right? It comes up with like this little cartoon of this boob with a flange on it. And it'll tell you if it looks like this, it's the right size. And it's like, that is so not accurate, even a little bit. Because when you start pumping, your nipple will swell. So if you put the flange on your boob without pumping, it looks like it's the right size. But once you get started and you're pumping for 5 minutes and your nipple swells and it's rubbing along the inside of the flange, then it's going to be painful. So it's not going to be the right size. You know how many women say to me, I looked it up and it looked like this was the right size, but it's still really uncomfortable. And it's like, because that little cartoon guy isn't pumping. Like this, it doesn't make any sense. So,
well, nowadays they have these like sizing things. Like you have them, like you can, it's like a strip of paper with like holes in it. And you can like pump for a few minutes, get your nipple that size, and then like print it out and stick your nipple in the hole. And you can size it like and find out what your size is.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty handy.
That's crazy.
Well, it gets the people the right size. I mean, it's a lot to go through.
Does it work?
I think so.
Is it? I'm picturing somebody like, I don't know, putting their nipple, a piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that if you don't know what you're looking for, then you don't know what you're looking for.
Right.
Then you just don't know.
Yeah.
And so how do people know? So if you're like, how are you supposed to know?
Yeah.
Bottom line, what do you do?
Go by how it feels. That's the big thing. If it's rubbing along the inside of the flange, it's not the right size. If it is pinchy, it's not the right size.
If you are elastic man like D.
And there are different flange shapes as well. So I have run into situations where sometimes the flange that comes with your pump, that shape of flange just does not work for your breast shape.
Yeah.
So there are different companies that make different flange shapes that are better for, different size women. So it might be that you have to kind of be a little creative and go outside the box and get a whole different brand of flange too. There's also like these little flange inserts that you can use that some pump companies have, where you can like put a little silicone insert in there and it makes it a little bit more comfortable to pump. The other thing that comes up a lot with flange sizes is if a mom is using a nipple shield, they think that the size nipple shield that they use is the same size flange that they should use. And the two do not correlate at all.
Okay.
They do not correlate. So that's very different.
All right. Let's move on to the next question. And there's a few more questions, and we're running a little tight on time. So I'm going to just read through this. This is a hefty one, and we might have to condense the answer here.
Okay.
I hear so many cautions against the thought that you have low milk supply. But how do you truly know that if you have it? I know there is already a podcast about this. Thank you. Yeah. But it really started to freak me out when I went back to work at 14 weeks postpartum and saw how little I was able to pump when separated from my baby. Covering normal pumping expectations will be very helpful. Social media and other outlets can lead me to believe I should be able to pump 4 to 5 ounces per session. No problem. No, that's a lot. For example, I had both breast implant 2007 and explant 2016 surgeries, and I am an insulin-dependent diabetic. I feel like that slows my breast milk fill rate, which feels like low milk supply. My baby's 6 months old, and I have barely been able to keep up with her since returning to work at 14 weeks postpartum. I have resorted to legendary milk supplements here and there, even though I have been cautioned away from supplements. I saw a small increase in milk and desperately want to preserve our breastfeeding relationship. I tear up typing this. Aww. So, we've got a question about how do you truly know if you have low milk supply? And then she has some, specific circumstances to her own situation that leads her to believe she might be struggling with this.
And, okay, so the first part where she says, how much should people be pumping? I should be pumping 4 to 5 ounces. That, we're not even going to entertain that because it is different for everybody. Everybody responds differently. There is no, you should be getting this much when you pump. That is not anything that we're going to even entertain. Because it's just not a thing. Like women get what they get. And it changes all the time. And it really is not an indication of supply at all. So we don't.
How much you pump is not at all an indication of the milk you're making.
No. The fact that she's pumping 2 to 3 ounces is fantastic. Mm-hmm. So, I would say if a mom calls me and says, I think I have low milk supply, she's maybe can only pump like 5 mLs. That would tell me, okay, there's a milk supply issue there. If she can't even get 20 mLs or half an ounce or cover the bottom of the bottle,
right.
Then maybe we've got a milk supply issue. That would also go with the baby not gaining weight, diapers being low, stuff like that. It sounds like she is just keeping up with what the baby needs, and maybe she's just struggling with the pumping piece. But that would probably also go along with her other little things that she's had that are very specific to her situation. Mm-hmm. So I would say that this mother in particular is doing an absolutely amazing job keeping up with her baby, considering that she does have a couple of things that might be causing it to be a little bit more difficult. Mm-hmm. Even just going back to work, like that's just a struggle in and of itself.
Right, right.
Yeah. So even without those things,
going back to work is a special circumstance.
That is, yeah. And if you can get a couple of ounces every time you pump, then that's fantastic. I don't ever want a mom to think that they're not doing enough if they're not getting 5 ounces every time they pump, because that is more rare.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot to me. Mm-hmm. That would be on the high end of what people are pumping, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's run through these real quick. I think these are a couple of short answers. Is it safe to refrigerate pumping parts in between sessions during one work day instead of washing?
Absolutely. Please do that because it'll save you a lot of time.
Yes. I love that. I discovered that. I decided not to go back to work, but I was like, I would so do that if I was still working. How often do you really need to boil or sterilize everything, bottles, pump parts, and all of that?
I would say once a day.
Yeah, because if you're putting it in the refrigerarator, then at the end of the day, wash it, sterilize it.
Throw in the dishwasher.
Can you speak to power pumping? Of topic of work and pumping, but pumping. Off topic. Okay. Well, power pumping. Should we just do an episode on power pumping, or is that?
You know what? Let's do it because there's a couple things that go with power pumping. So we'll just do an episode on that.
We'll do a separate episode on that. Stay tuned. Let's see. Can you speak to breast milk pump models that more mothers seem to find success with? I know it's different for each mother, but surely there is one or two that more mothers like. Well, that's so hard. That's the same thing with the flange thing, is that everybody's just going to respond differently and fit differently with different pumps, right?
Yeah, and it's hard because there's pumps out there now that I don't even know anything about and that are just kind of like creeping up now that they're being covered by insurance. There's new ones popping up all the time. And I hate to say, this pump is great, get this pump, and a mom can't get it because her insurance won't cover that pump.
Well, and that's yeah. Get the pump that your insurance will cover. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing, too, is like a lot of go through your insurance or go through some of these companies that help you connect to insurance-covered breast pumps because, get an insurance-covered breast pump. Get a free pump, man.
Yeah. Now, if you have a situation where your insurance says we will cover pumps A, B, and C. Like if you want to reach out and say, okay, out of these 3 pumps, which one do you think would be, has the better, or you could even like do a lot of Google searching on that. Which pump has a better review and blah, blah, blah.
Read the reviews on Amazon.
Yeah. Like that's a great way to go. If you're only being offered one, then just get that and just go with it. But if you're being offered a choice, then maybe look into them separately and see, which one you think would be best for you.
Yeah.
But
totally start with the insurance covered one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll end with might have to do another, I'm sure we'll have to do another episode on this one. But maybe we can just speak for a minute about what pumped breast milk looks like and the process of separation and how to know if milk has truly gone bad. And then she goes into freezing milk and storage guidelines, which I think we can do a whole episode on.
Yeah, we can do a whole episode on that. We might have to do a whole episode just on the freezing, storing, and what it looks like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
But breast milk does separate.
It does.
And it will look funky, and you'll be like, "Oh my God, my breast milk rotted." When I put it in the refrigerator, it's not rotten. Don't worry.
Nope, it's just fine.
It just looks weird.
Yeah, so we'll do an episode on that. That's a really good point. And I think probably somewhere along the way we did talk about it, but we never really got into
we need
details.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we need an actual episode on it because I couldn't even tell you where to find that information on our podcast. So that would be a good one. The other thing that I would like to mention really quickly is when I was pumping, I didn't pump much with my son, but with the twins I pumped more. And nobody ever told me that if you only pump one breast, you can block off the other side of the pump that you're not using. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, right.
Nobody ever told me that. And you get
like you can pump while you're nursing.
Yeah, you can pump while you're nursing, or maybe if you have a baby that only feeds on one side and you want to pump the other side because you're stashing away for going back to work or something like that. So there's a little connector thing on your pump that you can cover the side that you're not using. And what that will do is that will condense the suction to the one side that you are using. And you'll get way better suction. And I never knew that, and nobody ever told me that. And now that's one of those things where I'm like, God, I would have probably been so much more productive if I had known that. My pump would have worked that much better if I had known.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to, like Abby was saying, she didn't know about the flange sizes. I didn't know about the flange sizes either, but that whole pump one side thing was
that's good. That's good information.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Diane.
Yeah.
That was extremely informative, and we're out of time.
And who is it that sent us the email? Dee? Was that her name?
Dee. Yes, thank you, Dee.
Thanks,
that was
Dee.
very helpful. I think that you helped so many people get a little bit more of an idea of what to do. Look at the details.
Yeah.
The answers are in the details. The calm, the fighting the anxiety of all of this stuff is in the details.
Yeah, you're doing an amazing job. It is so hard to keep it up. It is hard. So you're doing an amazing. Anybody that's out there pumping, oh my gosh, I give you so much credit because it is hard to do. And we'll watch for those other episodes on power pumping and what to do with your milk.
What do you do?
What do you do
pump
with
it
it?
out? What do you do? Yes, and then please share your experiences with us in the review section on iTunes, and you might be our review of the week.
Yeah.
And head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. And you can join in our comment section, and you can find the sponsor links from Fairhaven Today and the promo code BADASS and other episodes.
Yeah, perfect. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.